Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Um, and I'm looking forward to teaching you more in depth on news reporting. Sorry, oh my God, writing for media. So anyway, I had to do an assignment for the Rutgers department, right? To list all the courses I've taught. 81 since 2004, and this course used to be called news reporting and writing. But anyway, y'all need to know that. Anyway, me and my dog. I don't think I met my dog last time. Say hi, Bruiser. Hi, doggy. He likes to sit with me. Hi, Snuggly. Yeah. He's, I think, a Cocker Chihuahua or something like that. Interesting. Okay, so one thing I want to address off the top is I got a couple of emails, and I got to say, don't take it the wrong way, but it's the first time I've been asked this since I've been doing remote, but I never take the videos down. I might have taken some videos down when the pandemic first started, because I had to switch video channels, but I never take the videos down. They're actually, if you want, it's on YouTube. Everything's there. This video will be on YouTube. And please pay attention to the instructions because I only do it once a week. And as I said, last week was different because we had a holiday on Monday. Class didn't officially start till Tuesday, so I posted on Tuesday. But I'll be posting on Mondays throughout the rest of the semester. Okay. And you'll be notified by email. You'll be notified. Actually, I try to get everybody's email, so I email you twice. Actually, I make sure everybody gets this. I email you by announcement, and I also email you. Or sorry, I also post it as a as an assignment. Okay, so yes, that's you will definitely have no problems if you need to catch up or whatever. Things happening in your life, it's there. It's still there. Okay. All right. So first thing to get in order here, I just want to share the screen. I'm recording this over the weekend. Okay. So I'm actually recording on Sunday, to be honest with you. And so, the thing gets outdated before then. But anyway, we do have our first graded assignment will be posted by the time this video is posted. Okay. So here's our home page. Okay. On Canvas. All right. And I actually really should go to the student view for this. Okay. So this is going to be similar to what we just did. Only now it'll be graded and it'll be longer. And assignments will typically be 500, 800 words. And this one will be just that too. Okay. Oh, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't actually go to the student view because this hasn't been posted yet. Sorry about that. Anyway, let me leave student view. By the way, you should do show by type. That's actually the easiest way to see like what the latest assignment is posted. Okay. Okay, so we did have chapters 1 and 2, just by the way. Remember the readings too, okay? But then we'll also have chapters 7, 9, and 13, which I'll go over next week. Okay. All right, that's due September 18th. But like I said, I don't test on I know it's weird. Okay. I know I'm giving out readings, but I'm not testing on it. But again, your writing assignments are actually tests for everything. Okay. So again, the whole idea is that like I know you're not doing the readings if you're not getting the assignments right. And I know you're not maybe doing the lectures or following the lectures if you're not getting the assignments right. So the lectures, of course, are posted here. Of course, tomorrow you'll see 9/12. Sorry, you'll see 9/11/23. Anyway, this is the new assignment. It'll be posted. See, it's right now. It's in dark. It'll be actually like fully posted when it won't look like that. So what you have to do is this. Please interview somebody you know. It can be a family member. Yeah, I break rules. Please keep the 500, 800 words and focus on what's unique about the person and what's new. Please refer to the video lecture and the reading assignments for guidance. Please write in a news story format that will follow the basic outline, which we'll talk about that today. Of course, then, the lead is typically the very first paragraph of the story, identifies what makes the story unique and why do we care. Okay. What separates, just like this assignment we just did, some graded assignment. What makes you unique, even like slightly compared to the next person? Okay. And then the rest of the story answers the questions who, what, where, why, how, when. Those are the five, what they call five W's, even though there's an H. And that's essentially, I mean, you try to answer as many of those questions as possible in the lead, of course, but you can't. So you basically use the rest of the story to try to answer all those questions and maybe get into finer detail, maybe even less important detail, which I'll talk about, but it's called the inverted pyramid, where the most important stuff, think of an upside down triangle. Most important stuff is at the top, and then things move down the story in declining order of importance. Okay. I will be getting into more into that. Somebody actually asked me to show them an example of a story that worked that came from the assignment I just came in. I mean, I didn't really want to do that because I wanted people to kind of actually just I don't want to see I want to see where you're at, you know. I don't want you to actually like just copy somebody else at this point. I mean, I will be handing out, I mean, as we do graded assignments, I do typically hand out assignments that work, you know, and then sometimes somebody hands into one early and then I'll say, hey, look, this is an example of one that worked. And of course, everybody gets a rewrite on these assignments. So, you know, by then you'll probably see one that works well. Okay. So anyway, I have three classes, rewriting for media classes. This is one of them. Sam Lampenfield wrote about how he spent most of his time planning or recording videos. So, okay, not the most necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, all due respect to Sam, but it's exciting enough because and unique enough because not everybody does this, and not everybody does this on the Rutgers dime. Okay, I mean, you think about it. I mean, you know, when you go to college, you know, you have your fun life and everything, and you have your academic life. There's really not a lot of room for in between, although we all have to work nowadays, right? So, um, anyway, so having some sort of a hobby that maybe goes beyond that, and going into the subject matter that he goes into is unique enough. And what I liked about this was that he actually stayed focused pretty much on the same topic from top to bottom. Again, the whole idea is that it's like a string, using my cell phone here. um you the apple cords, you know how like when you like kind of tangle them together, they kind of like have a hard time getting untangled because I don't know whatever material they use. But you want to stay on a straight line so you can follow it and it's not tangled and you can follow it from top to bottom. Okay. So Sam Lampenfield, a sophomore enrolled at Rutgers University, spends most of his time planning and recording videos. Despite only picking up a camera, in the second paragraph is a big one. So we go right into the who, what, where, why. What does he do? Okay, Lampenfield has invested much of his time into a hobby which seems to be blossoming into a career. He said, nice attribution too. You want to like try to source things to a source. You'll be seeing that on my assignments when I grade them. Being raised between two households and two social classes. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Lampenfield his early life experiences of complex social class gave him an interest in social function that he now puts into video. Okay, so this is that goes into the subject matter, but you see, it's about video making, all about one straight line, one straight thought, one straight focus on a subject. He volunteers at a homeless shelter, which he puts to video. Okay, and he looks at like the homeless abuse, you know, substance abuse population, and more about also mental health and drug abuse. All about again, basically he hopes to combine that into a career. Okay, so see, that's actually an example of a good story, a good kind of like solid focused story. And you almost like when you go through this kind of a story, you almost think of like just one word that's consistent throughout, one word that represents the subject matter that's consistent throughout. Okay. All right. And again, I wasn't really looking for that on the very first assignment. I just wanted to see where you're at. Just want to kind of give you an idea now that we're actually doing a graded assignment that will be due on September 18th, which is a week from Monday. Okay. And I usually grade them right away so you can rewrite them right away. Okay. All right. All right. So let me talk about like why we write the way we do. You can see that the language that Sam used was very simple. we use active voice where we put the noun before the verb. Everything is very direct. Okay. Everything is very simple. The whole idea is like try to put together this puzzle so that, you know, of a story so that everybody can understand what the hell you're saying. Okay. From fourth grade on up. All right. But it wasn't always like that. And this is like my evolution of journalism discussion and how we got to where we got to this point of why simplicity is so important in news writing. Okay. Because a long, long time ago, back when I had the printing press and all that stuff, you know, suddenly like news became something that was available to everybody, even though it might have been still hard to get to. And probably during the Civil War is when really it kind of picked up. There was a photographer, I'm going to photography, not necessarily news writing here, but photographers by the name of Matthew Brady. He was like the first mass produced photographer who was published in all sorts of newspapers, New York Times, everything. And I mean, he took a lot of pictures of people who were posed. But what he did was he actually kind of brought the Civil War, not, you know, not necessarily like the most realistic depictions, of course, because they're all seem to be kind of standing around. But he brought it to everybody's living room, okay, or log cabin living room. But anyway, you can see like there's an example right there. I mean, probably took like about what 3 hours to develop that photo, but you know that's how the war got to home. But it was basically the thing is though is that the newspapers were kind of divided. There was only newspapers. That was the digital media at the time, the quickest way to get news, right? There's another one right here, standing by the tent. I mean, they didn't typically. I mean, they actually did show War Dead, so that was brought to home. So there was some realism that was involved here. This is a famous one of General Grant, who later became president of the United States. Um, anyway, so yes, so that actually kind of people started to grab onto and say, "Oh my gosh!" But you know, this is actually great. We actually have news produced to our home. But the thing is, the news was actually really widely divided. Speaking about social classes, between two social classes, um, there were newspapers that this is the rise of the tabloids. Are really kind of trashy. Um, one that basically caused the start of the Spanish American War. When it's thinking, I should have called this up earlier. You're thinking of the USS Maine. And I'm actually looking for, you know, basically the newspapers essentially falsely reported that this happened. Actually not seeing the tabloids. I'm seeing more like the destruction of warship was the work of the enemy. You know, you basically had this kind of like almost like, you know, well, I would say like low intelligence way of speaking to people, almost speaking down to people. And then you had like the New York Times and places like that where they were kind of, yeah, that's actually getting a little ahead, where they kind of almost spoke above you. Okay. That also spoke down to you in another way. And that was the idea was that not a lot of people could read or read well. So newspapers were actually more for the elite or the tabloid trash, but it was more for the elite. So and so the way they wrote these stories was not exactly in a way that was like simple and easy to understand. And you know, it wasn't really doing people a lot of good. And I call up this one from 1912, the Titanic. Guessing that probably everybody has seen this freaking movie, right? Everybody knows what happened with the Titanic, right? You can sum it up in 2 words. But for whatever reason, the New York Times. I don't want to blame the New York Times too much for this because the New York Times was getting this information probably from Morse code. So they were actually trying to go as fast as they could. And when they got the information on Titanic sinking, they were probably just literally just taking off the Morse code and spitting it out on whatever lead type they were using. But it's written in a way that's like just almost ridiculous. Okay. A far cry from what we see on like Twitter. There's Twitter, or whatever, X now it's called. You see? Not to brag, I used to be verified on Twitter, and then the asshole, sorry, Elon Musk, took it away from everybody, whatever. But Twitter is like kind of like represents that kind of like fast get the news media information you as quickly as possible. U.S. Marshal Service Philadelphia last night, prison escapee Daniel, can't say it, was seen in the Phoenixville area. Apparently there's a prison escapee who's been circulating around the Philadelphia area right now. But you can see like the news is very quick and right to the point. And then they show pictures of the person who's out there, the suspect, that sort of thing. Far cry from the way that Titanic was reported. Because again, the whole idea here was they just didn't really put the care into like knowing really what people wanted to read or see. Okay. So let's look at now look, what happened with the Titanic? If you were here in like my in-person classes right now, I would ask you, what happened with the Titanic? It's funny, like I got a lot of frozen faces when I asked that question this week, my in-person classes. Well, the Titanic sunk. Do you really need to know more at that point, to get interested in the story other than that? Okay. But look at the way they reported it here. I mean, okay, one thing I should note is that we don't do headlines in this class. The headline got to it, Titanic sinks, okay? But that's actually done by editors. A lot of people, sometimes people skip over headlines, and it's actually a different writing craft. It's written in a different verb tense and the whole thing. We just worry about story writing here because we want people to get the news easy and quickly and with depth, okay? So here's our lead, the very first paragraph, okay? The White Star Liner Olympic reports by wireless this evening. Already it's getting me bored. Wordy. Do they really have to go into all this? I mean, I want attribution. I want to know where this information came from, but it's not really the first thing I should read, okay? At the Cunarder Carpathia reached at daybreak. If you have words that you can't pronounce, unless it's like a celebrity who passed away or something like that, or did something crazy, it should not be in the lead, okay? Because most people only read the first paragraph. Oh, anyway, it reached at daybreak this morning the position from which, oh my God, was it Shakespeare? Which wireless calls for help were sent out last night, Morse code, by the Titanic. It's very passive, okay? You want active voice is this. I had this right before, okay? The Titanic sunk. The noun is before the verb. That's the way people talk. You want your writing to be representative of the way people talk, okay? An iceberg caused the sinking of the Titanic. See, it's a very slow way. This is passive voice. This is active voice. You don't want to really, you don't want to write like this. It's wordy, it's boring, it's slow. It doesn't really grab the drama, the action. That's what's happening, okay? You want the Titanic sunk. This actually should have been the lead. It should have been just 3 words, all right? But it's not even, they didn't even get into the Titanic sinking. The Carpathia found only lifeboats and the wreckage of what had been the biggest steamship afloat. So what are we saying here? Everybody died? I mean, it's leaving us guessing. We have no idea what's happening. Finally, it says the Titanic have foundered, and using these big SAT words here, foundered. What does that mean? And then they don't even tell you like where it is. That's one of the important things in chapters 1 and 2 they talk about, is the importance of like proximity, like telling you where this happened, because obviously it's a lot different. It's a lot different if it's sunk in like warmer waters, because geez, then you would think to yourself, well, geez, what happened there? Something really bad must have happened, because what could get in the way? And was it sharks or something? I don't know. But it actually hit an iceberg in very cold water, and then people actually could have survived if it was warmer water, of course. And a lot of people didn't survive because they were frozen to death. So obviously saying like maybe near Iceland would have helped. Not the, what are you supposed to do? Pull out a globe from your pocket or something? Or they give you the longitude and latitude from the globe. And then it says due south of the position at which she struck the iceberg. Now we finally found out why it happened. An iceberg. All her boats are accounted for, and 655 souls have been saved of the crew and the passenger. You can almost read this like dramatic reading. It's biblical. Most of the latter, presumably women and children. There were about 1,200 persons on the board. As a person who's aboard the Titanic. Okay, so all right, so very slow way. What happened was basically this almost killed newspapers, news in general, because this around the time radio came around, and radio actually was the original digital media. It basically delivered the news directly to you fast, quickly. It was able to broadcast live events, live sporting events. That was a big deal. You know, programs, the radio programs they had that eventually became television programs. The old comedians like Jack Benny and Bob Hope and people like that. Um, Eventually, but then it was actually really TV that kind of took over, and TV discovered the art of not just delivering things quickly to you, but simplistically, because it's all about speed. If you can be a newscaster on TV and you can speak as quickly as possible, and at the same time say say words that basically use words that actually are simple, the newscaster can say them quicker and say them more easily, and then of course it's easier for you to understand. In the 50s and 60s, that's when the TV news picked up on that, and that's when they basically made basically I'll get to that, but basically newspapers had to basically reinvent themselves, because TV still, one thing TV couldn't do was provide the depth that newspapers could. Okay, and even to this day, actually, with the internet, TV stations actually, like TV actually has actually taken digital age since like 1995 and everything. It's actually been a lot harder for them, because they don't have the kind of quality, I have to say, typically writing and everything that newspapers have. So, you know, newspapers now can do video and stuff like that. So they have they actually have the ability to deliver the news quickly, newspapers, and in depth, and TV does not. And TV does not have the same ability. So TV actually has had a lot more layoffs and things like that than newspapers have had. Anyway, this is actually the reporting of. Actually, meant to go call up something else. Let me just get that out of the way first. I want to show you actually the first one of the first New York Times publications on the web. Show you how it actually took everybody. It was actually very hard for everybody to adjust to the web. Some of you, probably all of you, probably have like no memory of what the web used to look like way back in the day. And of course, this is like before you were born. So I just want to make sure I get there. Oops. No, come on. Okay. But anyway, let me go back to the 60s here first. Okay. So anyway, you can almost like now look, a lot of newspaper people went to TV. He worked for the Fort Worth Star Telegram. There's Walter Cronkite. He was the most famous anchor person at the time. And you can almost like, when you hear him talk, you can almost like hear some of the things that I've talked about as far as news writing is concerned. And that is that there's short paragraphs in the way he's talking. There's pauses, there's breaths. And that's the way he's doing it. That's what he's doing, is he's basically reading in a way that's actually like the news kind of format that we for that. So that we now see nowadays. And even then, and then this is, and when they started to actually like broadcast news like this on TV, newspapers felt like they had to kind of like mirror that, you know, with the shorter paragraphs. That's a little long paragraph, but you know, and give, you know, write in more simplistic language. Even the New York Times, which considers itself like a kind of a higher grade, but just basically try to listen and hear what he says, and notice that like the most important news is at the top, and he provides the details that probably people want to know about the terrible killing of Martin Luther King. I've actually visited the site, so I could almost kind of feel a little bit of like what is happening here.
In Washington, in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Russ Hodge in Memphis, Tennessee, Dan Rather in New York, Bernard Kalb in Saigon, Marvin Kalb in Wellington, New Zealand, and Bert Quint in Quezon, South Vietnam.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Police have issued an all points bulletin for a well dressed young white man seen running from the scene.
You notice the pause there in what he was saying. And then the interesting thing about this is, um, I mean, terrible, okay? But Martin Luther King, one of the greatest people ever, right? Alive. And now, I mean, there's monuments, there's a holiday for him, there's everything. He was actually like, and this is no fault of him or his supporters, but he was actually considered a divisive figure at the time. There was a lot of people that actually didn't like him, and there was a lot of racists, and there still are, unfortunately. But he had to basically show in a way like how profound this event was and how important. He could almost see into the future and see that this man was a man of change. And he had to basically show like the import of this event. That this was not just somebody murdered. This was Martin Luther King who was murdered. Okay. And what it could cause and what it could change and how it could set back the civil rights movement and everything. Okay. The apostle of nonviolence. Because his way of actually protesting and everything was different than others. It followed the Henry David Thoreau, the Walden, the civil disobedience, where basically like they protest, but they try not to break the law, although they threw him in jail anyway. Unfortunately, not his fault again.
Officers also reportedly chased and fired on a radio-equipped car containing 2 white men.
You see, that's probably one of the first questions is how did this happen? Okay. And it was done by a white man, and it was done by a white man who actually, James Earl Ray, who fled from the scene, eventually caught, thrown in jail. Yeah, so that's probably, they're trying to get in the minds of people. What's the first thing you want to hear about? How did this happen? Who did this?
Mr. King was standing on the balcony of a second-floor hotel room tonight when, according to a companion, a shot was fired from across the street. In the friend's words, the bullet exploded in his face.
Oh my God, that description is so horrible. I almost feel like they really have to go there. That's just, but they're trying to paint the shocking, shocking events of the moment, and there's been pictures of it and everything, like him laying there and everything, but it's terrible. But I think Walter Cronkite is trying to really get again showing the profound effect of what is happening. Again, notice the kind of cadence, notice the stopping, notice the pausing. He wants you, if you're like almost too shocked about it, he's giving you an opportunity to turn the channel. Okay. I know when 9/11 happened, that was we gave my son an opportunity to turn the channel. Basically, I was actually on my way to work, and I stopped and told my wife and my oldest child at the time. We have 3 now, but we had 1 at the time. And I remember actually, like I said out the window on the way to work, I said I heard over the radio the World Trade Center was just hit by a plane, and then my wife said, "Okay, bye," like that, and then like she immediately took my then 3-year-old, now 25-year-old, and put him upstairs and had him watch cartoons. So opportunity to change the channel, right?
Police who have been keeping a close watch over the Nobel Peace Prize winner because of Memphis' turbulent racial situation were all
Just one wonder, why were the police watching MLK? To protect him?
on the scene almost immediately. They rushed the 39-year-old Negro leader to a hospital where he died of a bullet wound
He was only 39 years old. My God.
in the neck. Police said they found a high-powered hunting rifle about a block from the hotel, but it was not immediately identified as the murder weapon. Mayor Henry Loeb has reinstated the dusk to dawn curfew he imposed on the city last week when a march led by Dr. King erupted in violence.
Now it gets into like some of the background, and background goes lower in the story, like why was Martin Luther King there? He was actually there because many Black Americans were actually like sanitation workers, unfortunately, and because it's not a lot of high pay, and until still to this day they're not given opportunities that white people have, I believe. The sanitation, a lot of them were sanitation workers, so he felt it was a civil rights issue to go there, because it was also about pay. You probably see a lot of this stuff happening right now with the whole writer strike and things like that. It's like the people who are like in the bottom of the totem pole. I'm not saying Black Star, but I'm saying that people in general at the bottom of the totem pole, the writers, that sort of thing, they get paid crap. People, and garbage people, the sanitation people, who probably are some of the most important people on earth, get paid crap. You know, they're paid a lot better now, but they're still paid crap. Okay, so
Governor Buford Ellington has called out 4,000 National Guardsmen. Police report that the murder has touched off sporadic acts of violence in a Negro section of the city. In a nationwide television address, President Johnson expressed the nation's shock.
America is shocked and saddened by the brutal slaying tonight of Dr. Martin Luther King. I ask every citizen.
what this does is provides balance to the story, another point of view, and obviously, I mean, you want to get the president's point of view. And it also, again, shows the import of the situation. The president actually comments on it. You know, nowadays, I saw that President Clinton comment on Jimmy Buffett dying just a few days ago or last week. And, you know, they were actually like friends in the whole thing. And I think Biden commented too. So it's actually like probably a lot more common now for a president to actually comment on somebody's death or something like that. And of course now with social media opportunities, but back then, I mean, if a president actually kind of spoke about somebody, it really didn't happen often. It really showed the import of the situation. So anyway, all right. So yes, so that's basically, you know, newspapers felt like they had to get to that point where they had to. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. I keep showing that because I thought it was funny. But anyway, this was a year later. Much different, don't you think, than what we saw before. Men walking the moon. I know this again, this is the headline, so we're not really talking about headlines, but look at the lead here. Look at this lead. Isn't it a lot different than Titanic? Now this never happened before, like the Titanic, and it's barely happened since because nobody has gone to the moon since 1972. But anyway, look. Do you really need to say more? Look at this, simplistic, straightforward, no fancy adjectives or anything like that. Men, they should say humans or persons, okay? They really should have. Men have landed and walked on the moon. They happen to be two men, but whatever. They should have, again, shown the imported situation. Human beings, for the first time, walked on the moon, okay? Men have landed and walked on the moon. That's it. I mean, do you really need to say any more, okay? Given the situation? You know, so they got it then, okay. But the best thing about this is that that Cronkite couldn't do maybe is again they could go into the written depth that follows while being simplistic at the same time. Okay, two Americans astronauts of Apollo 11 steered their fragile four-legged module safely and smoothly. Okay, how did it happen? That's how it happened. You know who did it? Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old since passed. Radioed to Earth in the mission Tranquility. It's interesting. The second person landed on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, still alive at like 93, 94. He just got remarried. Anyway, that's fine. No judgment here. Houston Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. And then, of course, they talk about, there he is, Buzz Aldrin of the Air Force, brought their ship to the rest on the levels, rock-strewn plain. This is where adjectives are fine because it's factual, okay? You want to show what the moon looks like from the naked eye, which nobody had done ever before. About 6.5 hours later, that's a long time. Armstrong opened the landing craft's hatch, stepped slowly down the ladder. And then this is the first thing he said, which sounds like prepared remarks. That's fine. Said, man, I should have said humans, but anyway, very straight. I show this because, you know, I don't know. The Onion is so funny. I always thought this was funny. Holy shit, man walks on the fucking moon. Oh, I'm gonna get flagged by YouTube now. Yeah, exactly. There you go. I actually posted this in the module. All this, by the way, is actually on the module. They basically, Onion makes fun of like events and newspaper clippings and stuff like that, and they kind of represented like what happened at the time. But the point is there. Look, they're being simplistic. Distant, lonely, mysterious satellite that has fascinated mankind since the dawn of time is distant and lonely no more. So yeah, but this is actually in the module section, if you want to call it, and so is the Titanic, by the way. That's actually under writing basics. I'll go over writing basics more next week too. Oops, get back. Okay. Because you have also chapters 7, 9, and 11 to read. Okay. And I show the lead, how it's basically so long and ugly, and then I show the lead to the moon landing. But I also show this, and there's the onion one there if you want to check it out. This I'll be getting into more probably next week, but this is actually more of a detailed description of what a um and the outline for a news story should follow. It should basically be a lead and what they call a transition. You should identify maybe again the answer. You should answer the questions who, what, where, why, when, and usually you do that with what they call transitions. Okay, and transition basically kind of breaks down the lead and starts to answer those simpler, more detailed questions: who, what, where, why, when. And an anecdote maybe tells like kind of a little bit of a story within a story to provide more depth and detail. And then you have like quotes that are kind of woven into the story. But I'll be getting more into that because we're barely getting into our first draft story. All right. So, and don't forget, you get a first draft on the graded assignment, and then I turn it into, and then you get a rewrite opportunity unless you get an A. All right. And then I'm on the first draft, you don't get a D or an F, you get an R. That means you have to rewrite it. But anybody who gets a C or above, except for an A, of course, can rewrite it for a higher grade. Okay. Nobody gets a lower grade for rewriting. About that question. The worst thing I do is, and it rarely happens, is if somebody get like a C plus, right, and they wrote it again and it wasn't any better, I might even like talk to you about it afterward. Okay. Say, hey, did I miss? Maybe it's me. Did I miss something here? But the worst thing I would do is not raise your grade at all. I would and not lower it. I wouldn't lower the grade from C plus. Okay. All right. So then the digital media came around, and the digital media actually initially was just not very good at all. I would say for a good 10 years, it sucked. And I guess you guys, you're probably around what, 19, 20, 21? You probably barely have a memory of like what, I mean, I would say it wasn't until maybe like the iPhones came around, and even then it wasn't that great because the iPhone Apple company had a exclusive deal with AT&T to act as a provider, and AT&T was horrible. And then finally they took in Verizon and all comers in like around 2011, and so people were choosing Blackberries. That's why Blackberries were popular. People were choosing Blackberries over iPhone. That's what I did initially for the first year, 2011. I chose a Blackberry at my work at Patch.com over an iPhone because iPhone sucked, the smartphones. So, but now it's a lot different. So anyway, but when that happened, and also high-speed internet, because they started bringing high-speed internet around 2000, 2001, but it wasn't very good either. I remember trying to use high-speed internet when my daughter was born in 2006. It was not easy at all. And there was also dial-up, and there was also dial-up internet, which was really slow. And you couldn't even really use even in a lot of cases, someplace you couldn't even use the phone when you had the internet on because it was connected to the phone. I actually was first introduced to the internet in 1987, long before it became popular and really very public. I had a computer science major as a roommate at Rutgers, and I kept forgetting that when you pick up the phone, he would be knocked offline when he was doing a thing called email. And we had a phone downstairs. He was upstairs. I remember, yes, we had a phone on the wall. I picked up the phone off the wall, and suddenly I hear a distant, ah. I knocked them offline. So yeah, it was actually difficult to use the internet. And look at the way this was like 1996. This is 9 years after my phone call. But anyway, this is the way the New York Times looked. I mean, look at it. You'd rather read the newspaper, rather read the actual paper edition than this. Right. And of course it took forever to call it up, and you couldn't like leave it on all day. Like that was the thing. When high-speed internet came around, it actually separated itself from the phone, and this is even before the iPhone, and you could actually just leave your computer on all day, and then you actually could just check the news. And that's when that was probably around 2004, 5, 6. And then that's when that's when the newspapers really kind of changed. I used to get a lot of people coming into my classes bringing daily targums. They don't do that anymore. So now, I mean, they eventually found a way, like, because they were able to expand the screen. The screen was also very small. That was actually how big the whole screen was. It went to here, that was it. Computers were very small at the time, but now, I mean, now they've actually found a way to actually, like, have everything here. And now this is actually, nobody really buys an actual newspaper anymore unless they really have to. But unless they're very old. But anyway, yeah, I mean, everything is here, everything is digital, everything. I mean, even like, and then usually the New York Times puts its most important stories like right here. Back in the day with the old newspaper edition, they used to just actually put it on the right side for some reason. You actually see, if you see the way back edition, you actually put the news on the right side following the format. I'm not actually sure exactly why they chose to do that. Isopar Press essentially does that. That's my my old local hometown paper, because I grew up in Point Pleasant, New Jersey. They put their top headlines like right here. They probably put like essentially like a feature story right here. Okay. But again, when you actually call them up, you'll see that actually, again, paragraphs are short, usually one or two sentences, usually one sentence, right? Gannett is actually a troubling site to use. Oh my God. Okay. So that's why we write simplistically the way we do. And going back, by the way, to the assignment, I actually provide an example of an assignment that worked. It's actually within the assignment entry itself. I'll just call it up here. Okay. Oregon got an A on this assignment right here. Okay, so Joaquin Mati, this is an interesting story because basically, and it's one thing I warned against is that you write about something that's unique about somebody. You write about, you want to, it may have been something that happened a long time ago, like 10 years ago or something like that, but maybe did it have even a year ago or something like that? That might be a little bit too far away, actually. You want something up to date. So you want to like write about like what's happened since then. And what she did was actually, she wrote about how he had his very own, I guess he was in I'm sorry, what's it called? The mixed martial arts. What's it called? Anyway, thing that what's it, McGregor's in. Anyway, he boxing, kickboxing, whatever. Anyway, he was involved in that, his very first public fight, but it was a landmark moment that's completely changed his life. So what she did was, I mean, it happened like months or a year back, but she updated it to basically say, okay, what does that matter now? How did it change his life? Did it actually like something that's he's continuing to do? Is he still alive? Okay. So it's unique in the sense that it's had an impact on his life, not just, so you don't want to just write about things that happened 10 years ago. You want to write about things that happened 10 years ago that still have some sort of an impact on them. Okay. Whether it's family related or whatever, that sort of thing. He continues to train, that sort of thing. And then you can maybe get into some background, like what led him to get up to this idea of fighting. See, he did not win that, but it basically changed his life by providing him with a new outlook in life on boxing. It's like a really long quote right here. I probably should have said no. I don't really like really long direct quotes, by the way. I'd rather you actually write the story and be a storyteller. And news writing is actually a lot of paraphrasing. You take what people say and you actually like try to use your own words to interpret it. Because a lot of times when people talk, it's actually like just too damn long. Okay, it's just like it rambles. This is actually a bit of a ramble right here. I'm just actually thinking about changing this story. I've been using this for a couple of semesters now. Maddie's coach continually keeps him extensive training, so this has actually become like a way of life for him. This year I'll be fighting twice a month, so we're even looking at even a little bit ahead. See the profound effect that it's had on him. Okay, so it's like a big deal that he did this, because not everybody who's a Rutgers student does this. But it's not only that, it's a big deal because it continues to have a profound effect on him. Okay. All right. So yeah, that is what I want you to do for next week. And it's simplistic, it's direct, and it kind of follows exactly what I was just talking about in the history of journalism and why we got to the way we are. We want people to connect and relate, I would say on a 4th grade level on up. Okay. All right. So like I said, I also gave you guys a reading. The reading is actually on this thing called Chegg. If you're ever, I mean, I don't know, maybe somewhere else now. I haven't been able to find it on a Kindle, But of course, also you have to buy the book somehow or another. I'm sorry, it's required of this course. And again, I don't test on the chapters, but I do give people an idea, like you know, um, I do look at the writing to see that you're actually following the reading. The first two chapters, I would say, I will be admit to you, are probably like maybe the least important chapters in the book. The next ones I give you, 7, 9, and I'm sorry, 13, not 11, are more important, really teach you how to write. But these ones actually kind of generally go about like the role that news plays today. Talks about the digital evolution that I just actually talked to you a bit about, how we got to where we got to. I mean, we all thought it was interesting because we all thought that news would actually really kind of lend itself well to digital, but it was newspapers tend to be like really cheap about the way they did things, and you'd think so. So some organizations like Bloomberg, news organizations, like were right there when the web started and everything back in the mid '90s. But a lot of the regular newspapers were not, and we only had like one. Like in '96, we only had like one terminal in our newsroom that had the internet. It's crazy. But they eventually like basically realized that they had to like come around and discover this and realize the importance of it. Okay. And provide it in a quick, speedy way. Some of the things that go into like putting together a news story. I mean, some of the things you don't have to worry about in the stuff that we do, like audio visual stuff like that. That's stuff that I teach and I taught in digital media and writing and reporting. It's another class that's actually beyond this one. But you want to look for things like culture, civics. Civics is a big one. Politics, that's one thing that's been talked about is a lot of people have not been covering like council meetings and things like that. The local government stuff. We keep hearing about Trump and all this stuff, but we want to know about like whether they're going to raise taxes in your town and stuff like that. We want to know about crime in your neighborhood. And we want to keep that in mind now when we actually do digital journalism, especially like when we report it, like I was showing you that guy in Philadelphia who was roaming around free, escaped from prison or something. We want to know the up to date, what's going on, the AP style book is basically like, again, like a dictionary of a dictionary. It provides essentially that kind of consistency that we want to see from journals. I talked about that in the last video. Okay. What does the news story typically include? Well, again, we don't deal with the headline, this sort of thing, but we do deal with a lead. Don't worry about this other stuff like slug and stuff like that. But some of the jargon that's used is lead is actually, again, usually typically the first story, identifies what the story is about and why do we care. Okay. A lot of times you'll hear me say not paragraph, but graph. It's just journalism jargon for paragraph. Okay. All right. And then please do not worry about these assignment crap at the end of each of these chapters. Chapter 2 gets a little bit better in terms of like what we need to know. It actually talks about the things we need to look for in terms of story topic, because actually that's one thing, and this is not just digital age. This is actually long before. Editors want reporters to be self-managers. They want he, she, they to be basically people who can like manage themselves. And there's probably no better thing for an editor to look at than an empty newsroom. Why is that? Because they're out getting stories, even in today's digital age. Of course, now it's a lot easier. I'll admit that you don't necessarily have to do that so much anymore. You can like Zoom people and interview, stuff like that. Now a lot of the news, especially at Patch, I mean, we just couldn't get out of the scene. We would actually like find traffic accidents on a New Jersey Turnpike camera, that sort of thing. So we were able to take pictures like that. But, there's still room for like basically going out there and getting the news straight from the person's mouth. But some of the things we look for, obviously, timeliness is huge, especially in the 24/7 media. You want to know things like traffic accidents. Why is a traffic accident important? Is it just because, well, you want to know about if somebody's hurt, people have compassion and things like that. But you want to know about like, is my commute going to matter? Of course, I know a lot of people are actually working at home, but you want to know if, hey, is there like an accident on the way to the store? That sort of thing. It's going to slow up deliveries, things like that. Okay. You want to know about like somebody roaming around in Philadelphia, like cause potential trouble, up to date things on that, latest pictures, stuff like that. Yes, that still matters, and that's why I have the deadline structure in our assignments, because you want to get things out as quickly as possible and on time. Okay. Impact or magnitude. I mean, obviously the impact, you want to look at like how many, if it impacts a lot of people, like a tax increase, like a serial killer or somebody roaming around who could hurt people, that's a big impact. More people potentially affect, more impact. Okay. Prominence. I mean, that's actually interesting because obviously, like, that can mean anything, but I always think of like people. Okay. And I hate to say that because no one person is more important than the other, right? But when Jimmy Buffett died, obviously that was like a big deal to a lot of people because a lot of people enjoy listening to his music and things like that. So he has prominence. So obviously that's in the lead that he died, right? A lot of people wanted to find out how he died. He died of skin cancer, which is like, oh my God. Yes. Unfortunately, he was known for being a guy who liked the party in the sun, that sort of thing, But that would be the example of like, if somebody else had died, unfortunately, you don't necessarily put their name in the first paragraph. Unless it's an obituary or something like that. Proximity, if it happens like close to you, I talked to you about the iceberg in the Titanic. Obviously, if it's a traffic accident happens close to you and it's not Interstate 5 in California, it's in the Jersey Turnpike here near Rutgers, and you got to go somewhere, you got to go to work, whatever you want to know. Okay. Local officials, things like that. Conflict. I always say okay, what? A lot of people complain about, all news is bad news, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know something? Because bad news actually does have more importance to people. It's more prominent. And because I like to say it's kind of like a move your cheese, as my wife likes to say, from the mouse kind of thing, where you basically, it changes your routines a lot. I mean, when traffic is sailing on the New Jersey Turnpike, do you need to tell people? Well, you can. That traffic is sailing and moving quickly, but if there's a traffic accident, that changes everything, right? And it doesn't happen as often, and that is a bad thing, but it actually affects a lot of things. Maybe you're going to visit relatives or something like that. So yeah, that's why like bad news typically is actually like more important. There's a killer roaming around Philadelphia, that sort of thing. You want to know, okay? Goes into the different types of news. Again, prominence, timeliness, objectivity, the importance of being objective and removing yourself from the story. I know we just did a story about ourselves, but offensive details, but you want to keep yourself out of the story, okay? There are moments where I have like first person stories, stuff like that, where they do that. I kind of tend to not like them. One time I did a triathlon and I came back, I wrote a third person story on it, and my editor yelled at me saying, this is 30 years ago, why didn't you write a first person story? And I was just like, just don't like doing that, Anyway, I was talking about sensationalism and the start of the Spanish-American War. You really want to like just state the facts and not conflate them. You want to stay away from rumors or hearsay, things that are like said by somebody and then said to another person. You want to get information straight from wherever source it is, and then source it through the use of what they call attribution. That's he said, she said, they said, the name person then said. Okay. This stuff maybe not necessarily need to know right now, but basically, like, we try to keep the names of juveniles and even the sexual assault victims because of the crime or whatever might involve might really violate a person's privacy. I mean, you could make that argument about a lot of crimes, obviously, but I know there's been a lot of dispute about that and a lot of talk about that. But the accuracy of facts, again, my 3 tenets are accuracy, clarity, and focus. And again, not the biggest thing about accuracy is you're not going to get sued necessarily. It's really hard to sue somebody, and we'll be talking about that. But again, the whole idea of being credible, okay? And this is the end of the chapter. Basically, if you have a situation where, and I just use this name, I know there was a person by this name, but I just use this name here. If you have somebody around who maybe is like a crime or a criminal or something like that, or whatever, suspected criminal, and his name is let's just use this name. I use a different name. Rich Brown. Okay. Let's say it's that. Okay. Now, a lot of people would assume it's that, right? Maybe there's another Rich Brown in town, okay? So basically, if it's really that, and you don't actually spell his name right, you know, and you make sure that you get the name spelled right by police, and sometimes the police spell the name wrong, okay? You really want to make sure that actually it's backed up. A lot of times, actually, I'll even go to the web and I'll find the person's name just to make sure it's the, I mean on some detail, like you'll see like property listings and things like that, just to make sure it's actually the right person. But if you put in the wrong Brown, you actually, people have actually sued over this because they'll think that's the person who killed somebody or something when it's actually this guy, okay? All right, so that's the end of, end of chapter 2. Yeah, chapters, let me just make sure. You have, so the assignments, you have this writing assignment right here is due in a week. And then you have, we talk about this in our next, which will be posted in a week, our next lecture, chapter 7, 9, and 13. Okay. If anybody has any questions about anything, please feel free to let me know. And yes, I do office hours on Zoom and that sort of thing. So please feel free to ask about that. All right, thanks very much, everybody, and I really appreciate talking to you. And let me know if you need anything else. Thanks. Oh, and say goodbye to my dog. Hey, Bruiser. He's just over there. He likes to lay next to me. I think he stalks me. Anyway, bye-bye.